My child, some men never say the words out loud. They don't sit you down and confess their feelings. They don't always show love in obvious ways, and sometimes they don't even understand what they feel themselves. That's why emotional attachment in men is often misunderstood. People look for big actions, clear statements, or constant reassurance. But with men, the truth usually shows up much more quietly. There is one clear truth you need to understand first. When a man becomes emotionally attached, it changes his inner world before it ever changes his behavior. You may not see it right away. You may even feel confused by him. But inside, something has already shifted. His emotions start to orbit around you, even if he never admits it. Men are often taught to control their emotions. From a young age, many learn that feelings equal weakness. Vulnerability feels risky. Caring deeply feels like giving up control. So when emotional attachment starts forming, his instinct is not always to open up. Often it's to guard himself. That's why emotionally attached men can look distant, quiet, or inconsistent on the surface. But distance does not always mean disinterest. Sometimes it means the opposite. Here is the core idea that everything else grows from. When a man is emotionally attached, he cannot fully detach from you, even when he tries. He may pull away. He may go silent. He may convince himself that he's fine without you. But emotionally, he stays connected. You remain present in his thoughts, his reactions, and his emotional patterns. This connection doesn't shout, it whispers. It shows up in small moments, in pauses, in returns, in unfinished conversations, in the way he reacts to your presence or absence. Even when nothing is being said, something is still happening underneath. An emotionally attached man doesn't disappear cleanly. If he steps back, it's rarely final on an emotional level. He may stop talking for a while. He may say goodbye. He may focus on work or distractions. But something pulls him back. Maybe it's a message that seems casual. Maybe it's checking in just to see how you are. Maybe it's watching from a distance. These returns are not accidents. They are signs of emotional connection that hasn't been resolved. What's important to understand is that silence does not mean disconnection. For emotionally attached men, silence can be a way to cope with feelings they don't know how to handle. He may think space will help him regain control, but control and attachment don't work the same way. The emotional bond remains, even when he tries to step away from it. Another subtle sign appears in his emotional state. When a man is emotionally attached, your energy affects him. Your mood reaches him, even when he pretends it doesn't. If you're distant, he feels unsettled. If you're warm, he relaxes. If you pull back, something tightens inside him. He may not talk about it. He may not even understand why his mood shifts. But emotionally attached men are impacted by the emotional climate around the person they're attached to. This is not about control or dependence. It's about emotional resonance. When someone matters to you emotionally, their emotional state naturally influences yours. Men just express this influence differently, often internally, quietly, and without words. Because of this inner conflict, emotionally attached men often behave in ways that feel confusing. One day they are open, warm, and connected. The next day they feel distant or unsure. This inconsistency is not always a lack of care. Many times it's self-protection. Caring deeply brings fear with it. Fear of loss. Fear of not being enough. Fear of getting hurt. Pulling back becomes a way to manage those fears. You may notice that even when he's quiet, he's still paying attention. Emotionally attached men often watch more than they engage. They notice changes in your tone. They sense shifts in your mood. They remember details you forgot you shared. They pick up on things you never said directly. Emotional attachment sharpens awareness. Even in silence, he is tuned in. There is also something else that happens internally. When a man becomes emotionally attached, you become a reference point for him. Even if he tries to move on, new connections don't feel the same. He may date, he may talk to others, he may distract himself. But emotionally, something feels off. Not because others aren't good enough, but because emotional attachment creates an imprint. His nervous system remembers you. His emotional body recognizes the connection. This is why emotionally attached men often say they don't understand why they can't let go. It's not logic. It's not choice. It's emotional memory. Emotional attachment creates continuity inside him. Even when circumstances change, the internal bond remains. It's important to clear up one misunderstanding. Emotional attachment is not obsession. It's not weakness. It's not manipulation or neediness. It's the result of feeling safe, understood, or emotionally alive with someone. Once that experience happens, it doesn't disappear easily. Sometimes, emotionally attached men pull away not because they don't care, but because they care too much. Attachment can trigger fears they've learned to avoid. Distance becomes a coping strategy, not a sign that the feelings are gone. Here's a quiet truth you need to hold on to. If a man is emotionally attached to you, you don't need to chase proof. You'll sense it in the way the connection never fully ends, in the way he comes back, in the emotional undercurrent that doesn't disappear even when things are unclear. Emotional attachment doesn't announce itself loudly. It shows itself over time, through patterns. And once you learn to see it, things begin to make sense. If this resonates with something you've experienced, share your thoughts in the comments. I'd really like to know what stood out to you. My child, when emotional attachment deepens, it starts to show in ways that are easy to miss if you're only looking for obvious signs. Most people expect love to look loud and clear. But for many men, attachment moves quietly beneath the surface. It lives in reactions, timing, and emotional tension rather than words. And this is where confusion often begins. An emotionally attached man may look calm on the outside while feeling restless on the inside. He may seem busy, distracted, or focused on other things, but his emotional system keeps circling back to you. Even when he tells himself he's fine, even when he believes he's moved on, something inside him doesn't fully settle. That unsettled feeling is not random. It's the emotional bond asking for resolution. One of the strongest signs of this is how unfinished things feel. Emotionally attached men struggle with emotional loose ends. Conversations that ended too quickly stay with them. Moments that felt important but weren't fully expressed replay in their mind. He may think about things he wishes he had said, or moments he wishes he had handled differently. This inner replay is a quiet form of attachment that doesn't require contact to exist. You might notice that he reacts strongly to emotional shifts between you, even if he doesn't explain why. If things feel unresolved, he feels it too. If there's tension, it lives inside him longer than he wants to admit. This is because emotional attachment creates a need for emotional clarity, even in people who are uncomfortable with emotions. Another subtle sign is how he responds when he senses you pulling away emotionally. Even if he doesn't say anything, something changes in him. He may become quieter. He may act slightly off. He may suddenly reappear after a period of distance. Emotional attachment makes men sensitive to loss, even when they don't consciously recognize it as fear. This is where many people misinterpret behavior. They assume if a man isn't consistent, he doesn't care. But emotional attachment does not always create consistency. Often, it creates internal conflict. He wants closeness, but closeness feels risky. He wants connection, but connection makes him vulnerable. That push and pull is not confusion about you. It's confusion about himself. Emotionally attached men often protect themselves by keeping emotional intensity under control. They may limit how much they share. They may joke instead of opening up. They may change the subject when things get too real. This doesn't mean the feelings aren't there. It means the feelings feel bigger than what they know how to manage. You might also notice that he remembers things that matter to you, even when it seems like he's not paying attention. Emotional attachment sharpens memory. He remembers your preferences, your struggles, small details about your life. These memories stay with him because emotional attachment ties information to feeling. Even months later, certain details remain clear to him. There is also a difference in how emotionally attached men deal with replacement. When there is no attachment, moving on feels simple. When there is attachment, moving on feels forced. He may try to distract himself with new people or new routines. But emotionally, it doesn't land the same. Conversations feel flatter, connections feel lighter. Something feels missing, even if he can't explain what it is. This doesn't mean he's comparing people directly. Often it's subconscious. Emotional attachment sets a baseline for emotional depth. When something meaningful has been felt, shallow connections become more noticeable. This is why emotionally attached men can seem restless even when everything appears fine on the surface. Another important detail is how emotional attachment affects his sense of timing. He may reach out at unexpected moments. Not when it's convenient, not when it's logical, but when something inside him shifts, late at night, after something stressful, during moments of reflection. Emotional attachment connects to emotional states, not schedules. You might wonder why he doesn't just say how he feels. The truth is, many men don't have clear language for emotional attachment. They feel it physically before they understand it mentally. It shows up as tension, restlessness, nostalgia, or emotional heaviness rather than clear thoughts. So instead of expressing it directly, it leaks out through behavior. This is also why emotionally attached men often seem calmer when you are emotionally present. Your warmth regulates him. Your reassurance settles something inside him. Even small moments of connection can have a big emotional effect. That's attachment working quietly in the background. It's important to understand that emotional attachment does not always mean readiness. A man can be emotionally attached and still unsure of what to do next. He can care deeply and still hesitate. Attachment speaks to emotional connection, not emotional skill. Many men feel deeply but don't know how to move forward with those feelings in a healthy way. This is where patience and clarity become important. Not chasing, not forcing, but observing patterns. Emotional attachment reveals itself over time, not through promises, but through returns. Not through big gestures, but through emotional consistency beneath surface inconsistency. There's also a key difference between ego and attachment. Ego wants attention. Ego fades when ignored. Attachment stays present even without validation. An ego-driven man disappears when he doesn't get what he wants. An emotionally attached man struggles to fully disappear, even when ignoring would be easier. As time passes, emotional attachment either finds expression or creates tension. If acknowledged, it deepens. If suppressed, it resurfaces later. That's why unresolved emotional connections often return after long periods of silence. Not because of destiny, but because emotions that aren't processed don't simply vanish. The most important thing to remember is this: emotional attachment is felt more than it is said. It lives in the emotional undercurrent between two people. When a man is emotionally attached, he may leave physically, but emotionally, something keeps pulling him back toward you. If you've noticed these patterns in someone's behavior, or if this matches your experience, leave a comment and share what you've observed. My child, as emotional attachment continues, it starts to shape how a man experiences connection, distance, and even silence. What's important to understand here is that attachment doesn't always make someone move closer. Sometimes it makes them pause. Sometimes it makes them step back and observe their own emotions more carefully than ever before. An emotionally attached man often becomes more aware of himself. He notices how much you affect him, and that awareness can feel uncomfortable. If he's not used to emotional depth, he may question why one person has such an impact on his thoughts and mood. That questioning doesn't push the attachment away. It actually confirms it internally. This is why emotionally attached men sometimes go quiet during important moments. When emotions feel strong, silence becomes a way to regain balance. He may need time alone to process what he feels, even if it looks like avoidance from the outside. In reality, he's trying to understand feelings he was never taught how to navigate. You may notice that even when he isn't talking to you, he reacts to things related to you. A song reminds him of you. A place brings back a memory. A small detail triggers a feeling he didn't expect. Emotional attachment connects emotions to experiences. Once those connections exist, they surface on their own, without effort. Another subtle sign is how protective he becomes internally. He may not show it openly, but he feels concern for your well-being. Your struggles stay with him. Your stress affects him. Even if he doesn't step in or offer solutions, he carries awareness of what you're going through. That quiet concern is not obligation. It's emotional investment. Emotionally attached men also struggle with emotional finality. Clean endings feel unnatural to them. Even if they agree to move on, something inside resists closure. This doesn't mean they want drama or uncertainty. It means emotional bonds don't operate on logic. They fade slowly, not instantly. You might notice that when you reconnect, even briefly, the emotional tone returns quickly. Conversations feel familiar. The emotional rhythm comes back naturally. This ease is another sign of attachment. Emotional bonds remember their own language, even after long gaps. At the same time, emotionally attached men can fear what attachment asks of them: responsibility, presence, emotional availability. If he feels unsure about his ability to offer these things, he may pull back to protect both himself and you. Distance in these cases is not rejection, it's self-doubt. This is where many people get hurt. They assume distance means lack of feeling. But often, it means too much feeling combined with uncertainty. Emotionally attached men may worry about disappointing you. They may fear being needed when they don't feel ready. That fear doesn't erase attachment. It complicates it. Another important aspect is how emotional attachment affects his future thinking. You may show up in his imagination without him meaning to include you. Plans, ideas, or possibilities may involve you naturally. Even if he doesn't act on them, the fact that you appear there matters. Emotional attachment integrates someone into your sense of continuity. Emotionally attached men also tend to feel unresolved emotions more strongly than they admit. Guilt, regret, longing, or confusion may surface unexpectedly. These feelings aren't signs of weakness. They're signs of emotional depth trying to find expression. You might also notice that he reacts differently to you than to others. His tone changes. His patience shifts. His emotional responses feel more personal. That's because emotional attachment creates emotional specificity. You don't get treated like everyone else. You occupy a distinct emotional space. What's important for you is not to overanalyze every moment, but to observe patterns. Emotional attachment shows consistency beneath inconsistency. Even when behavior fluctuates, the emotional thread remains. That thread shows up in returns, awareness, emotional reactions, and difficulty letting go. There's also a quiet respect that often accompanies emotional attachment. He may respect your boundaries more than you realize. He may hold back rather than push. Not because he doesn't want closeness, but because he values the connection enough to not damage it. As time goes on, emotional attachment asks for resolution. Not necessarily a relationship, but emotional honesty. When attachment is ignored, it creates inner tension. When it's acknowledged, even silently, it brings calm. The most grounding truth here is this: emotional attachment doesn't rush. It doesn't demand. It simply exists, and when it exists, it leaves traces everywhere, even in moments of absence. If this part helped you understand someone's behavior more clearly, let me know your thoughts in the comments. As emotional attachment stays unresolved, it begins to influence a man in quieter but deeper ways. This is the stage where attachment settles into his emotional system. It's no longer loud confusion. It becomes something steady in the background. He may function normally. He may look fine. But the emotional connection still exists underneath everything else. At this point, an emotionally attached man often becomes more reflective. He thinks more than he speaks. He revisits moments in his mind, not out of obsession, but out of emotional significance. Certain memories feel heavier than others. Certain interactions stand out. That's because emotional attachment gives meaning to moments that might look small from the outside. You may notice that he becomes more careful around you. Even if there's distance, he chooses words more thoughtfully. He avoids topics that might reopen emotions. Or sometimes, he brings up meaningful subjects unexpectedly. This inconsistency isn't manipulation, it's emotional sensitivity. He feels more than he lets on, and that makes him cautious. Emotionally attached men often struggle with emotional honesty, not because they want to hide, but because they fear the consequences of being seen. Saying how he feels makes it real, and once it's real, it can be lost. For many men, silence feels safer than vulnerability. There's also a deep internal pull that remains, especially during moments of stress or emotional exhaustion. When life feels heavy, his mind drifts back to emotional safety, and emotional safety is often tied to the person he's attached to. This doesn't mean he expects comfort. It means your presence exists as emotional grounding in his inner world. You might notice that even when time passes, his emotional reaction to you hasn't flattened. He may act neutral, but emotionally there's still texture, still warmth, still tension. Emotional attachment doesn't fade quickly. It softens slowly, layer by layer, if at all. Another quiet sign is restraint. An emotionally attached man may hold himself back from crossing certain lines. He may avoid casual behavior that would feel easy with someone else. That restraint comes from respect and emotional weight. When feelings matter, actions carry more meaning. Emotionally attached men also tend to feel a sense of unfinished emotional business. Not necessarily regret, but awareness. Awareness that something meaningful existed. Awareness that it shaped him. This awareness doesn't always push him to act, but it stays with him. What's important to understand is that attachment does not always seek ownership. It seeks connection. It seeks emotional recognition. Even if nothing changes externally, the internal bond remains part of his emotional history. You may wonder why emotionally attached men don't just resolve things quickly. The truth is, resolution requires emotional courage, and not everyone has learned how to sit with vulnerability without shutting down. Distance becomes the easier option, even when it doesn't bring peace. Over time, emotional attachment teaches him something about himself. It reveals his capacity for depth, care, and emotional presence. Even if the connection doesn't continue, the imprint stays. It becomes part of how he loves in the future. For you, the key is not to wait for dramatic proof. Emotional attachment doesn't perform. It persists. It shows up in subtle loyalty, emotional awareness, and the inability to truly forget. If you relate to this or recognize these patterns, you can comment something simple like, "I've seen this," or "This explains a lot." My child, when emotional attachment reaches its deepest layer, it becomes less about action and more about presence. At this stage, the connection lives quietly inside a man, influencing how he feels, how he remembers, and how he understands emotional closeness itself. He may not reach out. He may not make a move. But the attachment still shapes him from within. An emotionally attached man, at this point, often accepts the feeling without fully naming it. He stops fighting it as much. He may still keep distance, but the resistance softens. Instead of trying to erase the connection, he carries it. It becomes something personal, private, and meaningful. Not something he needs to explain to anyone else. This is where emotional attachment becomes steady rather than intense. It's no longer confusion or emotional turbulence. It's a quiet knowing. A sense that someone mattered deeply and still does in a certain way. Even if life moves forward, that emotional truth stays intact. You might notice that his respect for you deepens over time. He doesn't speak badly about you. He doesn't dismiss what you shared. Even in absence, there's care in how he holds the memory of you. Emotional attachment creates emotional integrity. It changes how a man carries himself in relation to someone who touched his inner world. At times, this attachment shows up as emotional restraint. He may avoid situations that would blur boundaries. He may choose distance over confusion. Not because he feels nothing, but because he feels enough to want to protect what once mattered. Midway through this realization, many people suddenly understand something important. The absence of noise doesn't mean absence of feeling. If this line connects with you, you can comment. Quiet feelings are still real. Emotionally attached men often process emotions slowly. Long after others have moved on, he may still feel echoes. Not pain necessarily, but awareness. Emotional attachment doesn't always hurt. Sometimes, it simply exists as emotional depth that never found a place to land. You may also notice that he carries lessons from the connection forward. He becomes more emotionally aware, more careful, more intentional. Even if he never reconnects, the attachment changed him. That's one of the clearest signs it was real. This kind of attachment doesn't need constant contact to survive. It's not fueled by messages or validation. It's sustained by emotional memory. That's why even long gaps don't erase it completely. Time changes how it feels, but not the fact that it existed. Another quiet truth is that emotionally attached men often wish you well even from afar. Not in words, not in gestures, but internally. Your happiness matters to him, even if he's not part of your life anymore. That's emotional maturity growing out of attachment. At this stage, attachment is no longer about wanting something. It's about acknowledging what was meaningful. And that acknowledgement brings a strange kind of peace. Not closure, but acceptance. For you, understanding this changes how you interpret silence. It helps you stop filling gaps with self-doubt. Emotional attachment doesn't always show up the way people expect. But when it's real, it leaves a lasting emotional signature. The final truth is simple. When a man is emotionally attached, he may leave physically, he may step back emotionally, but something inside him never fully disconnects. And that quiet continuity is what makes emotional attachment so powerful, even when nothing is said.